Hello! Welcome! The state of this room pretty accurately reflects the experience of living through this month of October, which did not go even remotely close to plan. Hi friends, my name is Emily and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my October wrap-up. This was a weird reading month. I started off the month by finishing Matilda by Roald Dahl. So Matilda is a piece of middle grade fiction targeted towards 9 to 12-year-olds. It tells the story of Matilda, who is a genius child who has telekinetic abilities because her brain isn't being challenged enough, I guess. And she just has so much brain power that she discovers she has this extra energy to put into moving things. And it's about her befriending this teacher, her relationship with shitty parents, and it's really cute. This was my first time reading the book. I can't help but compare Matilda to Carrie, which I also read this month for the Red Rum Book Club. There is a patrons exclusive live show for it this Saturday where we will be discussing Carrie. So I'm not going to say too much about Carrie, which I did finish this month as well, but it was really interesting to read Matilda and Carrie back to back, which is probably not something anyone intended ever. Completely different markets, but still fun nonetheless. Matilda was funny. It was an absolute joy to read, even though I had already watched the movies many times. So yeah, if you haven't read Matilda and you are an adult, I would still recommend picking it up. The next book that I read in the month of October, as I just mentioned, was Carrie by Stephen King. Carrie is Stephen King's first published novel. It's more of a novella. It follows the story of Carrie, who is abused by her mother, who is a religious extremist and made fun of by all of her peers. She's a social outcast, and she too develops telekinetic powers, not because she's bored, but because she reaches sexual maturity. And there's a link between her maturing into woman and her maturing into her powers. And I'm pretty sure everyone's familiar with the story, but I mean, no spoilers. It was a joy to reread. I was a little bit worried about some of King's works that I encountered as a young person not living up to my adult brain. The brain that's not working right now. Because, you know, when you're young, you're more willing to forgive things. So the format was actually really cool. You could imagine it as like a notebook of someone piecing together the Carrie White incident, and they're collecting newspapers and recordings of bulletins, like almost in the way that like the Serial podcast recreates that Adnan case. It's almost like that with Carrie. There's a narrative running throughout it between the clips that give us different perspectives. The narrator is obsessed with breasts, how they look, how they move. There's just a lot of boobs. A lot of boobs. I really enjoyed Carrie, and I'm very much looking forward to discussing it this Saturday with my patrons. The intention for this month was a horror deep dive, which didn't happen for reasons I will not go into. I'm not comfortable sharing those right now. Patrons did receive 2 vlogs. So what happened was I scripted horror genre exploration, like what does horror actually mean, because that was something that I don't think I really fully understood, even though I've read horror for a while. And then I also looked at the history of horror, like trace that genre back. And it's interesting, a lot of it overlapped with the research that I did on the Fantastic for my MA project. So going back to a lot of the research that I used for my MA thesis and like specifically looking for the horror was really fun. And so I had 2 like, here's what I learned videos, because I learned a lot. And I wanted to share that. And then what was supposed to follow were a series of vlogs looking at sort of canonical or like well-established texts within the genre, texts that appeared in my research, and a vlog myself reading and looking for what I learned in those things. So 2 vlogs did go live to patrons this month. They have not made it to YouTube because the other 2 videos haven't happened yet, the research videos. And I'm debating, like, do I continue that into November? Do I just hold off on it and like around February when everything is like sickly romantic, be like, little horror series? I haven't decided yet. Anyways, patrons have a video where I read as many stories from the Grimm brothers, original folk and fairy stories translated by Jack Zipes. So this is a fantastic translation. Jack Zipes is a phenomenal children's lit and fairy tale scholar, like big name in the field, very well respected, and this translation of the fairy tales from German into English is very good, apparently. I haven't read the original German tales, so I can't speak to that, but a lot of other scholars now look to this translation. This was really fun. Like, it was a truly weird reading experience because I hadn't thought about a lot of the shit that happens in fairy tales as horror, but when you actually start to think about it, like the amount of cannibalism and murder and body parts being collected, a lot more horrifying than I expected. And so, like, I actually really enjoyed the experience of reading through a number of these tales back to back, because first of all, you get to see different variations on the tales, so you can imagine how the oral storytelling is spreading. Like, my approach to this before was to pick up the stories that I was specifically interested in. So if I saw a Little Red Riding Hood retelling in, I don't know, a book of poetry or something, or in Angela Carter, right? I would look up Little Red Riding Hood in Grimm, I'd look it up in Anderson, I'd look it up in all of the editions I could find, and compare different versions of the tale. So I was picking and choosing the tales. I wasn't reading straight through. Reading straight through, you see elements of one story sort of get folded into another, and like they're technically different stories, but you can see they have the same roots. So you can imagine that as people are telling these stories, they're like, ooh, I really liked that aspect of this other story I've heard. I'm gonna include it in mine. So it's interesting. It is very interesting to read them back to back to back to back. A little bit exhausting because by the time you've spent like 8 hours reading variations of similar tales, you're like, all right, I'm done. I can't quite decide, even in hindsight, whether or not I recommend that experience, but I did it. So then I picked up this Edgar Allan Poe collection of stories. So I suffered through the first 5 stories in this book. They are the Metzengerstein, Bernice, Morella, Ligaya, The Fall of the House of Usher, and I stopped at Eleonora. Who's to say that I didn't hit like a bunch of duds? I think The House of Usher was one of the better stories. I have come to discover that while I enjoy Edgar Allan Poe's poetry, I do not enjoy his short stories. I did film a vlog for this that basically sums that up because I don't own a lot of Poe's poetry. I pushed through 5 short stories and was like, this makes me hate my life. I don't enjoy his prose. Then I read through the rest of the poetry in this collection, which is Edgar Allan Poe Stories and Poems, illustrated by David Plunkett. Obviously the text is by Poe. So the first half of this book are stories, and I tackled a large majority of them during October of last year. And again, I decided to DNF it because it wasn't seasonally appropriate and I wasn't super enjoying it. I think Fall of the House of Usher overlaps. So with the things that I read last year, The Fall of the House of Usher overlaps. So then I went to the poetry section of this book and read through the poems, which are Tamerlane, Alone, Lenore, The Sleeper, The City in the Sea, The Haunted Palace, The Conqueror Worm, Dreamland, Annabel Lee, A Dream Within a Dream, The Bells, and The Raven. And I have to say that reading an author the way I did for this month, it's interesting when you find an authorial tick. Like they're like, oh, I really like how this sounds. Maybe if you read their works spread out, you wouldn't notice it. But when you're reading it back to back to back, Poe really likes the O-R-E or rhyme. Eleanor, Lenore, Evermore. Like basically the Raven is pretty, the Raven is an accurate summary or like averaging of all of his works in terms of the like the mouthfeel reader. His mouthfeel is like for alcohol and coffee, and but do you know what I mean? Like that repeating sound. My brain is really not working today. It has been a long month. It has been a long day. It has been a long week. And it just keeps going. Just picks up from here to Christmas. It was an interesting experience to look at Poe as a writer, but I came to discover that I didn't super enjoy him. This collection pulls some of his best short stories. The other collection I have is just short stories, flat, and so who knows what I got, but a lot of them were not that fun. So, and I do remember not loving, but enjoying more the short stories in this collection rather than the short stories in this collection, which were a struggle. Then I read H.P. Lovecraft's Tales of Terrors. Again, this is an anthology for a vlog. There is a vlog for my patrons, and that is going to stay patron exclusive because the internet is not ready for what I had to say about this. So I read the first 3 stories in here: Dagon, Herbert West Reanimator, and Call of Cthulhu. Oh, let me just say I fucking hate H.P. Lovecraft. And if he is your problematic fave, that's cool. We all have problematic faves. I really enjoy Miley Cyrus's music. She has some interesting feminist, queer politics. She borrows from Black culture with like zero consequence. Like she picks and drops Black culture when it's convenient for her. But I enjoy her music. I enjoy the sounds that she makes with her mouth. And I can both love and critique her at the same time. We can do the same with H.P. Lovecraft, who is a racist human, and that is very apparent in his works. So it's super cool if H.P. Lovecraft is your fave. He can be your fave, but it's also important to acknowledge that if there is a reason to blame a Black person for anything, he's gonna do it. Let me just talk about how this is, I think, is my favorite part. My favorite racism. My favorite racism? It's like the shining beacon of like, it's the emblem. It's the emblematic. Oh my god, I need to sleep. This is pretty emblematic of what you are going to get from this. Ready? Oh, so for context, there's this crazy science guy who thinks it would be super duper neat to reanimate corpses. And the fresher the corpse, the better. So he's been digging up white people corpses and working medicine for white bodies because back in the day they thought that because your skin was different on the outside, the medicine wouldn't work the same on the inside. See some of the horrifying research and studies done around Black men and syphilis. We have a shitty past as white people. White people did some horrifying things. Anyway, so crazy mad scientist guy wants to bring back a corpse, and there is a Black boxer who has recently died, and he wants to acquire this corpse. So, quote, "The match had been between Kid O'Brien, a lubberly and now quaking youth with the most un-Hiberian hooked nose, and Buck Robinson, the Harlem smoker. The Negro had been knocked out, and a moment's examination showed us that he would permanently remain so. He was a loathsome, gorilla-like thing with abnormally long arms, which I could not help calling forelegs, and a face that conjured up thoughts of unspeakable Congo secrets, and tom-tom poundings under an eerie moon. The body must have looked even worse in life, but the world holds many ugly things." Oh my fucking god, H.P. Lovecraft is one of those many ugly things. The next book that I read as part of the series but didn't actually end up filming because by that point, this was like October 28th, it became very clear to me that I wasn't gonna make it, that this was not happening this October, is Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, collected from folklore and retold by Alvin Schwartz, drawings by Stefan Gamel. So this is actually really cool because it's designed to be read out loud. Like there are stage directions in it. At the beginning, the introduction that most kids probably won't read, it tells you how to tell a scary story. And then there are cues throughout, like in brackets, at this point, pause, and then jump at the person next to you and shout, "You've got it!" Right? So like this was really fun. The images are disturbing. They're like fun, weird urban legends and they are dark and I loved this. The next book I read after that was one of the books that I was gifted for my birthday. This is from my grandmother along with Midwinter Witch. I picked up Pumpkinheads by Rainbow Rowell and Faith Erin Hicks. This is a gorgeous graphic novel set in a pumpkin patch. It is the last Halloween that the main characters will experience together before they go off to college. Josie is obsessed with the Fudge Hut girl and it's his last night to tell her how he feels, and so Deja, being a good friend, volunteers to go along with him and make his dreams come true. And it's just cute. The illustrations are gorgeous, and if you're looking for something cute and autumnal, 10 out of 10. Would recommend. The next book I read here I borrowed from work. That is The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse by Charlie Maxey. This is a weird little graphic novel. If you are not good at reading handwriting, you are going to feel very uncomfortable. They're just like kind of cute, cliche life-isms. Quote, often the hardest person to forgive is yourself. Like, it's cute. It's definitely worth reading, especially if you're feeling sad. The art, the integration of the art is really interesting. Very glad I didn't purchase this and that I borrowed it instead. It's not something I could see myself rereading. The last book that I just squeaked in this morning is The Midwinter Witch by Molly Knox Ostertag. This is the third book in this graphic novel series for middle grade readers. Again, it is gorgeous, it is vibrant. I love the way the characters are shaped. They're very cute and round, like Lilo and Stitch kind of is cute and round. Everything's a little bit puffy and I like that. This is the third book, so I don't want to spoil anything, but basically Aster is a boy and he's a witch. The twist there is that in this world, men are shapeshifters, women are witches. Aster can't shapeshift, but he can do magic, and so he's this first boy witch, and it's a very, very transparent metaphor for gender. So I think this is great for young people. It's just a fun read in general because magic, witches, the beautiful illustrations, but I mean, there's that added bonus of like conversations around identity can come up in here as well. That is my October wrap up. I hope November is better. Thank you all for your support. Before we go, we have to thank my patrons. Thank you, patrons, for making videos like this and other projects possible. I really appreciate the work that you are enabling me to do. Patrons, I will see you on Saturday. Be sure to check. It is 12 o'clock to 1:30 Toronto time, so coordinate yourselves. I'm gonna try and piece my life back together. So I will see you soon. Bye.